Hey there, welcome to another exciting edition of McSci-Fi TV. More fun than most humans can normally handle. Today we're excited to announce I've got a printer, so I can print stuff out and don't have to look at a computer screen or a phone or anything else. I just look at you, gaze softly into your eyes, make that weird noise that some people think is sexy and other people think, ugh, it's gross. Whatever, it's a noise, and it's made by me. So there you go. We've got a lot of stuff going on in the world of building sci-fi. The Kickstarter has started for CROSSTITCH ALPHA, the 7, Book 1 Envy. You can find that on my YouTube channel. You can find it on the internet. You can find it on Facebook. You can find it everywhere. But if you're on this channel watching me, it's probably the video next to this. So just click on that. And you'll find out all sorts of neat stuff. It's a great book. It's the first thing I'm doing that's going to be actually eligible to be read by kids in Sunday school, so I'm excited about that. Most of my stuff is obviously not fit for children, just because that's the way things worked out. I'm an adult, I write for adults. There you go. Anyway, so today I'm going to share a story with you that was picked up originally by ICC Magazine and distributed to where all the wonderful places ICC Magazine goes. Before I became an assistant editor, back when I was still a coffee guy or intern or whatever the heck I was, I don't know what I was. I was a dude. I'm still a dude, but I was, never mind. Anyway, so we're going to have some fun here. I'm going to read you a selection from Twerking for Jesus. It's a great story. It's a great story. I hope you like it. Amanda Johnson stood at the edge of the grave and smiled. She wasn't happy that her husband of 51 years was gone. Far from it. She had loved him more with each passing day until he'd finally shrugged off this mortal coil. He had been a good husband, father, grandfather, and lover. Especially the lover part. No, she smiled at the memories. They were all wonderful. She ignored the rain that was pissing all over, rebalanced her cane, and looked out from under her umbrella. Their 4 children were there with their 11 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. They were sad now, but Amanda hoped they would remember the good times as she was. Thomas had been a font of happiness, and that should be his legacy. Occasional shafts of sunlight broke through the clouds and moved across the lawn like alien beams from some cheap sci-fi flick. Thomas would have liked that. He loved sci-fi. Said it provided hope for the future. He prayed every day but was no fool. His belief in God was based on his love of science. He refused to believe that he was the most evolved being in the universe. Science said he was, most likely not, and that somehow made him happy. Science said cancer had killed him. It also said that it was his fault. He'd ignored symptoms for years. Had he not, he would, most likely, still be alive. But not even that knowledge saddened her. He'd made his decisions and lived with them. He never once played the poor, poor, pitiful me card. Instead, he'd faced his impending mortality directly and with humor. He used to joke that science was going to introduce him to God, albeit a tad sooner than he might have liked. Just as the casket was being lowered into the ground, a rogue shaft of sunlight graced over the head of the coffin, making it appear as if his soul was being beamed into the hereafter. That made her smile all the more. Her smile widened even more when she heard a couple of her kids, even though they were still all around 50, they were still her kids, talking about the same thing. Thomas's legacy would be a good one. She clutched her umbrella tighter as the wind kicked up and headed back into the town car her son had rented. The driver opened the door and she took her seat in the rear as the rest of the family piled in. She was pleased to hear laughter. The final shaft of sunlight had broken the somber mood. They all joked and talked on the ride back to her house. Their house. Thomas's house. She'd already made up her mind to sell it. She didn't want to live out her days in a mausoleum, and she knew Thomas would approve. Before she did that, however, there were a million details to take care of, and those would keep her busy for a while. Then she would decide what next steps the next stage of her life would take. Oxel floated above the bottom of the Mariana Trench. He didn't know it was called that. Of course, to him it was just home, a place of shelter and food. He sensed upwards and smiled inwardly as the new gods began playing with the weather. They had been brought into this firmament to complete one task and one task only. They were to rid the planet of the disease called humans. The old gods had made them when they'd come to realize their long game scenarios were unable to deal with the rapid evolution of these vermin. The new gods' plan was insidious and glorious all at once. They would use the planet-killing humans' inability to care for their world as the means of their eradication. Given how quickly the Earth was heating up, they figured humans would all be gone in 100 years or so. A mere blink to any such as Oxel. Or it would be if any of them had eyes. He let his senses revel as the new gods used existing wind and weather patterns to create storms larger than any seen before. Those would kill many humans, to be sure, but that was just a bonus. The end game for the new gods was to disrupt the weather patterns enough to allow the planet to heat even faster than humans could compensate. In some places, they were past that tipping point already. Twerking for Jesus. How Twerking and Jesus get into that story, you're just going to have to go read it. And like I said, it's up at ICC Magazine. You can literally Google Twerking for Jesus, and it'll take you right there, because there's nothing else out there with that name. Well, no, there's a group of strippers who do that, but I think you can tell the difference. I'm not the hot-looking blonde in a bikini going, I'm twerking with Jesus. That's not me. All right? Cool. All right, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Mixed Sci-Fi TV. We'll be back next week with more stuff. And again, we've got the Kickstarter out for CROSSTITCH ALPHA, Book 1, Envy. So the video should be right next to this one, so click on that and you can learn all about that. You are, of course, amazing and wonderful, and thank you for playing along.